If you talk to yourself when you're alone, it's not a bad habit. It's a sign your brain operates on a higher level most people never reach. From a young age, most people are quietly trained to disconnect from their inner voice. The moment a child is seen talking to themselves, adults step in with concern or correction. Stop doing that. People will think you're weird. Over time, a powerful message is planted. Your inner dialogue is something to suppress, not explore. This conditioning creates a deep internal conflict. Humans are born with a natural tendency to narrate, question, and process reality through inner speech. Psychology confirms that self-talk is a core tool for emotional regulation, problem solving, and identity formation. Yet society treats it as a flaw instead of a feature. As adults, this suppression shows up as anxiety, overthinking, and emotional confusion. People feel overwhelmed but don't know why. They feel disconnected but can't explain it. The problem is not that the mind is too active, it's that the relationship with the mind is broken. Modern neuroscience shows that inner speech activates the prefrontal cortex, the same area responsible for decision-making and self-awareness. When this inner voice is unconscious or suppressed, behavior becomes reactive. People live on autopilot, responding to external triggers instead of directing their internal state. This is where the deeper problem begins. Quantum physics introduces a disturbing idea: the observer affects reality. At the smallest measurable level, particles behave differently depending on observation. While this is often misunderstood or exaggerated, the psychological parallel is clear: awareness changes outcomes. If your inner dialogue is unconscious, fear-based, and repetitive, you are constantly observing reality through limitation. That observation becomes your lived experience. Most people don't realize that they are constantly talking to themselves, just not consciously. The inner voice never stops. It narrates failures, predicts rejection, replays past mistakes, and imagines worst-case futures. This is not intuition. This is untrained mental noise. When someone talks to themselves out loud or consciously, it actually signals the opposite of dysfunction. It means awareness has surfaced. But because society lacks emotional education, this awareness is misunderstood. Spiritually, ancient traditions warned about this exact issue. Buddhism called it the monkey mind. Stoic philosophers emphasized internal dialogue as the foundation of character. Mystics across cultures practiced spoken prayer and self-inquiry, not silently but verbally. The modern world removed the spiritual framework but kept the mental chaos. As a result, people chase control externally. They try to fix life through hustle, validation, consumption, and distraction. But no amount of external control can stabilize an uncontrolled inner environment. This creates a silent epidemic: people who look functional but feel internally fragmented. Here is the real problem no one talks about. When inner dialogue is unconscious, it programs identity. Repeated thoughts harden into beliefs. Beliefs shape perception. Perception filters reality. This is not philosophy, it is cognitive science. And from a quantum spiritual perspective, perception is the interface between consciousness and experience. People who are discouraged from engaging their inner voice lose access to one of the most powerful tools they have: self-direction. Instead of asking themselves questions, they absorb answers from outside. Instead of regulating emotion internally, they seek escape. So when you talk to yourself and feel different, isolated, or misunderstood, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you are operating with a tool most people never learned how to use. And that misunderstanding, that is the real problem. The discovery begins the moment you realize your inner voice is not just thought, it is a signal. For decades, scientists believed thoughts were nothing more than private mental events. But modern neuroscience has revealed something unexpected. Inner speech activates the same neural networks as spoken language. Your brain responds to self-talk as if someone is actually speaking to you. This explains why the words you say to yourself feel so real. They shape emotion, posture, confidence, and decision-making. When repeated consistently, they don't just influence behavior, they form identity. Psychologists call this metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. People who talk to themselves consciously tend to score higher in self-regulation and emotional intelligence. They can interrupt negative spirals and redirect attention. This is not weakness, it is mental flexibility. Now the discovery deepens. In quantum physics, one of the most controversial principles is the observer effect. At a fundamental level, particles exist in probability until measured. Observation doesn't create reality out of nothing, but it does determine which potential becomes experience. When you apply this concept to human consciousness, a powerful parallel emerges. Your inner dialogue is a form of observation. It is how you measure your life, your abilities, and your future. This is where spirituality and science quietly meet. Ancient traditions never separated thought from creation. Spoken prayers, mantras, and chants were designed to focus awareness and stabilize internal energy. The goal was not to ask for miracles, but to align the inner state so the outer world could respond. What modern science is now discovering is that repetition of intentional self-talk alters neural pathways. The brain rewires itself around the language you use internally. Over time, this becomes your default perception of reality. One emotional story illustrates this discovery clearly. A man suffering from chronic anxiety began narrating his thoughts out loud during moments of stress. Instead of saying, "I'm panicking," he said, "My body is responding to perceived danger, and I am safe." At first, it felt artificial, but within weeks, his nervous system began to calm faster. His anxiety episodes shortened. His sense of control returned. Nothing external changed. The inner observer did. From a quantum manifestation perspective, this shift matters because coherence matters. When thoughts, emotions, and beliefs send conflicting signals, reality feels unstable. But when inner dialogue becomes conscious and consistent, coherence forms. This is why people who talk to themselves often feel guided or in sync. They are constantly checking alignment internally. They notice subtle emotional signals others ignore. The discovery is not that self-talk creates instant miracles. The discovery is that it changes the probability field you live in. You begin making different choices without forcing them. You notice opportunities sooner. You exit situations that no longer resonate. Life doesn't become perfect, it becomes responsive. This is why suppressing inner dialogue is so damaging. It removes the observer from the system. Instead of conscious participation, life becomes reaction. When you talk to yourself intentionally, you are not escaping reality. You are finally participating in it. And once this discovery clicks, one question naturally follows. If awareness changes outcomes, how do you use it deliberately? That question leads directly to the method. Understanding awareness is not enough. Transformation begins only when awareness is applied. This is where most people fail, not because the method is complicated but because it feels too simple to trust. The method starts with one principle: your inner voice must become intentional instead of automatic. Most self-talk happens at high speed, driven by habit and emotion. The goal is not to stop thoughts, but to slow them just enough to take control of direction. The moment you respond to a thought instead of being dragged by it, you shift from reaction to authorship. The first technique is called observer repositioning. When a strong emotion appears, speak it out loud in neutral language. Do not identify with it. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," say, "Anxiety is present in the body." This small linguistic shift creates psychological distance. Neuroscience shows that naming emotions reduces activity in the amygdala and restores balance to the prefrontal cortex. You are not denying emotion. You are relocating it. The second technique is direct questioning. Negative self-talk survives because it is rarely challenged. When a limiting thought appears, respond to it verbally. Ask, "Is this absolutely true?" Then ask, "What evidence supports the opposite?" Your brain is forced into cognitive flexibility, breaking repetitive loops. This method is powerful because the brain cannot hold two contradictory beliefs with equal intensity at the same time. Questioning introduces instability into fear-based narratives. Now comes the third technique: future anchoring. Speak to your future self as if they already exist, not in fantasy but in calm certainty. For example, "I am learning how to trust myself more each day." Neuroscience confirms that the brain responds to imagined rehearsal similarly to lived experience. From a quantum perspective, attention collapses probability toward coherence. This is not wishful thinking, it is neurological priming. Next is a practical daily exercise that integrates all three techniques. Set aside 5 minutes in complete privacy. Sit comfortably. Speak one challenge you are facing out loud. Describe it without drama. Then ask yourself one clear question: what is the most grounded response available right now? Answer without overthinking. This trains trust and intuition. Over time, your responses become calmer, faster, and more accurate. Another powerful exercise is emotional dialogue. When a painful emotion arises, speak to it as if it were a part of you, not an enemy. Ask what it needs. This may sound strange, but psychology recognizes this as parts integration. Spiritual traditions call it inner alchemy. When emotions are heard, they stop screaming. The final rule of the method is consistency over intensity. Do not force positivity. Do not repeat phrases you don't believe. Speak honestly, calmly, and regularly. The nervous system learns through repetition, not performance. People who apply this method report subtle but powerful changes. Decisions feel clearer. Emotional reactions soften. Opportunities appear naturally because perception sharpens. This method works because it aligns 3 layers at once: language, emotion, and awareness. When those layers agree, reality becomes responsive instead of resistant. Talking to yourself is no longer random. It becomes a tool. And once that tool is used consistently, something unexpected begins to happen. You don't just change how you think, you change who you are being. That is where transformation begins. Transformation does not announce itself loudly. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, in the space between a thought and a response. When people start using intentional self-talk, the first change they notice is not external success, it is internal stability. Situations that once triggered panic or anger begin to lose their grip. The nervous system learns that it is no longer alone inside the mind. There is guidance now. There is presence. This alone reshapes daily experience. One woman described it as finally having an adult in my head. For years, her inner voice was chaotic and critical. When she began speaking to herself with awareness, something unexpected happened. Her emotions didn't disappear, they organized. Fear still appeared, but it no longer controlled her decisions. This is the first layer of transformation, emotional regulation. Neuroscience confirms that calm self-dialogue activates the parasympathetic nervous system. The body exits survival mode. When survival mode fades, creativity returns. The second layer of transformation is identity shift. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you change the way you describe your life. And the language you use internally becomes the story you live externally. A man who constantly labeled himself as unlucky began correcting that inner narrative. Not with blind positivity, but with accuracy. He started saying, I am learning how to respond differently. Over time, his decisions improved. His confidence stabilized. People responded to him differently, not because the world changed, but because his presence did. Identity is not fixed. It is reinforced through repetition. The third layer of transformation appears as external alignment. This is where people begin noticing coincidences. Opportunities arrive at the right time. Certain doors close without struggle. Others open effortlessly. From the outside, it looks like luck. Internally, it feels like flow. Quantum manifestation does not override reality. It reorganizes how you meet it. When internal resistance dissolves, external friction reduces. People who practice conscious self-talk often report better timing, sharper intuition, and clearer boundaries. They leave unhealthy environments sooner. They choose differently without forcing change. The final layer of transformation is self-trust. This is the most powerful shift of all. When you hear your own voice consistently guiding you toward clarity instead of chaos, you begin to trust yourself. That trust becomes grounding. Decisions feel lighter. Fear loses its authority. Spiritually, this is described as alignment with the higher self. Psychologically, it is integration of conscious and subconscious processes. Either way, the result is the same, inner coherence. This transformation is not dramatic in the beginning. It is subtle, but over time, it compounds. People don't become louder. They become clearer. They don't chase reality. Reality responds. And once this transformation stabilizes, a deeper realization emerges. This ability was never meant to be used only for personal healing. It carries responsibility. That realization leads to the final stage, the mission. Every transformation carries responsibility. When you learn how to guide your inner world, you also learn something unsettling. Most people are living without that guidance. They are not weak, they are untrained. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. The mission begins with awareness, but it does not end there. People who talk to themselves with intention often feel different from the world around them. They sense patterns others miss. They notice emotional undercurrents in conversations. They feel misaligned in environments built on noise, urgency, and distraction. This is not superiority. It is sensitivity sharpened by awareness. From a spiritual perspective, this is often called being awake. From a psychological perspective, it is called high self-regulation. From a quantum perspective, it is coherence. Different languages, same truth. The mission is simple, but not easy, to remain conscious in an unconscious world. This does not mean preaching, correcting, or fixing others. It means modeling stability. When your nervous system is regulated, people feel it. When your inner voice is calm, your presence becomes grounding. This is how change spreads, not through force, but through resonance. History supports this. Cultural shifts never begin with the majority. They begin with individuals who regulate themselves first. Inner coherence precedes outer reform. Talking to yourself becomes more than a tool for personal growth. It becomes a form of responsibility. You stop feeding fear loops. You stop amplifying chaos. You become selective with attention, because attention is energy. The mission also involves discernment. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion deserves control. Conscious self-talk teaches you to pause before reacting, to choose before speaking, to observe before judging. In a world addicted to impulsive reaction, this alone is revolutionary. Spiritually, this is service. Psychologically, this is leadership. Quantum-wise, this is influence through coherence. The final part of the mission is commitment. This ability fades if neglected. Inner dialogue must be maintained, refined, and protected. This means limiting mental noise, choosing silence when needed, speaking internally with honesty instead of performance. The world will constantly try to pull you back into unconscious patterns. That is not failure, it is the test. And this is where your role becomes becomes clear. If you are still watching this, it is not by accident. People who resonate with this message are not meant to disappear into the background. They are meant to stabilize something, first within themselves, then within their environment. So here is your call to action. Tonight, speak to yourself with awareness. Not to escape reality, but to meet it fully. If this video brought clarity to something you couldn't explain before, subscribe. This channel exists for those who know there is more happening beneath the surface. Share this with someone who talks to themselves and wonders why they feel different. They are not broken. They are early. If this video made you pause and reflect, that's your inner awareness responding. Subscribe to this channel for deeper insight into consciousness, quantum manifestation, and self-mastery. And share this with someone who talks to themselves and feels different. They need this reminder. Because the people who understand their inner voice are the ones who shape reality from within.